Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another Macabre Daily interview. My name is Brian Finnerty, and today we are talking all things vampires. I am super excited to be joined by Margaret Hall and Jamie Rue, who have an upcoming book being released on October 7th, which is called Blood, Sweat, and Queers. Vampiric love stories. Um, love the title, to say that right off the bat.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
That was 100% Margaret.
I'm a big fan of wordplay.
So we're gonna jump right in. We'll give the credit to the title to Margaret.
She's 100%. She came up with so many incredible title options. I don't even remember any of them. I came up with the most generic, most boring titles humanly imaginable. And then Margaret was over
Somewhere,
here just absolutely spitting out the most incredible options.
if I remember correctly, we were talking about titles. I think I was flying. It was like late January, early February, right?
Yes, it was late January, I believe.
Yeah, so I was flying around and doing a bunch of stuff. And so I was just sat in an airport, just hammering into my computer the most nonsensical things you've ever seen. Someday someone will pull those like chat logs of
They
us
were
going back
not
and forth with these
nonsensical. They
titles.
were really good.
That's the beauty of having a partnership, right? You can just,
True, true.
especially, it seems like the two of you are really comfortable with each other, so you can just like shoot
Oh,
down
yes, very much
ideas with
so.
no hard feelings.
This
Um,
project is very much born out of a friendship that Jamie and I had before we were collaborating in this way. Jamie and I have been very good friends since 2020.
okay.
And so we came into this with a really strong repartee and an understanding of each other's strengths.
Hmm. Can I might be wrong, but can I guess is this where the Twilight connection comes in? Is that what brought you
It
two
is.
together, your origin
It is.
story?
That
Yeah,
is, yeah.
Yeah, I do my research before interviews.
there you go.
Incredible.
So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about like how you two
Yeah.
met and how the idea
So,
for this book came about?
well, okay. So,
You take
first,
2020, I'll take 2025.
okay. First off, back in I think it might have been 2019 actually that I
It
joined.
might have been when it got announced. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Margaret was one of the moderators on the Twilight subreddit. And they had put out like a call for moderators, and I was very active on on the Twilight subreddit. And this was before the big Twilight Renaissance happened, like before Midnight Sun got announced. And so this
Hmm.
was still like we were pretty niche and things were pretty dead because there had not been new content in like 7 years.
Yeah. The subreddit
Um,
at that point was for the diehards. It
yeah.
wasn't
Okay.
like, yeah.
Yeah, so I submitted and I got accepted, and then we were talking and found out that we both lived in New York and that we had both gone to NYU. And so we were like, we have to meet up at some point. And then I did we meet before or after COVID happened in person?
After COVID, because I remember we
Yeah.
took that mask photo.
Yes, we did. Yeah, yeah. So the first time we ever met in person was after COVID. So we were online friends for quite a bit before that
Yeah.
actually happened.
And we weathered the entire Twilight Renaissance together, moderating a subreddit that went from like 10,000 to, is it over 100,000 at this point?
Oh my
It definitely is,
gosh.
I think.
Like,
Let me check.
we worked together really close over that COVID year, trying to keep
Oh
that not
yeah.
falling apart.
That's
Yeah.
wild how big it is.
Margaret, not only are we over 100,000, we are over 150,000. We're at 167,000 visitors.
Yeah, I don't look at the numbers anymore because it stresses me out.
I hope I don't get kicked off the chat for admitting this, but like I never got into Twilight. I missed the
That's
boat
okay.
on it.
It's
I
okay.
my little sister was obsessed, and I think unfortunately my big brother energy took over, and it was more important to me to tease her about it than to actually read the
Hmm.
Yes.
books and see what they were
You are
about.
not alone in that.
Yes, definitely not alone. I actually, before I got into Twilight, I was like that because my brother was oddly into Twilight prior to me being into Twilight because he
Okay.
had like an interesting action figure phase where he didn't care about the movies or the books really. He just cared about the action figures they were releasing of
There
the
are some cool
characters
figures.
for some reason. And so I had the exact same thing of being like, I'm the older sister. I'm not going to care about what my baby brother is into.
Mhm.
And then I read the book, and then I was like, oh, okay.
Now,
And
is
then I
it
read Twilight in 2007, and I've been here ever since.
now, considering the two of you edited a book about vampires, is it fair or unfair to assume you're both team Edward?
I'm
For
Team
me,
Edward for
absolutely.
Bella.
What did you say, Margaret?
I'm Team Edward for Bella. I think
Or
the
Bella?
best choice for Bella is Edward.
Okay. Okay.
That's same. That's how I always interpret any kind of team talk. Is I assume I know that that's not always how people mean it. A lot of people mean it like they want to get with the person.
Mm,
I always take it to mean who should the person in the middle end up with.
yes.
It's like nowadays the big thing is the summer I turned pretty, and so people are like Team Jeremiah or Team Conrad, and it's like realistically, I'm looking at that as who should Belly end up with, and not as like who would I want to end up with,
Mm.
Yeah.
because the
Neither
answer would
Jamie
be
and
neither.
yeah. Neither Jamie and I, and let me know if I'm speaking wrong on little Jamie here, but I don't think I am. Were those there's like some readers that put themselves into the stories they're reading, and there's some
Mhm.
readers who absorb it as these are characters outside of myself.
Mhm.
And I don't think either of us, I know I definitely never was, but I don't think you were either, even in the early days, like the I see myself as Bella type of
Yeah.
reader.
I saw pieces of myself in Bella. I did not see myself as Bella. And so
Okay.
I had always said, if I were given a chance to like be in the Twilight universe, I would not like go after Edward or anything like that
Mm-hmm.
because I would not want to break up Bella and Edward. Not that that would be
Yes.
possible, but
But like
that's kind of my
your idea
my
of it.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm gonna try like a really clumsy segue here, but like what you
Okay.
said about that idea of like projecting yourself into the characters, I feel like that aspect of reading is maybe something that's very important in the project that you collaborated on. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, does that bring us to like the 2025 part of the story that you were
It
Yeah,
gonna tell
so
does.
us?
you can tell
Yes.
the 2025 part of the story now.
I get the 25. So you fast forward, it's been 6-ish years that we've been very good friends. I've been to her wedding. We have put on Twilight events in Forks. Like we've been
Wow.
through a lot of life together at this point. And the inauguration happens for
Mhm.
the administration we're currently living under. And I, like a lot of this country, was feeling pretty desperate.
Mhm.
And I had communicated that to Jamie. I was basically like, I feel like I need to do something, but I feel like I'm just like clicking buttons to donate
Yeah.
money places and volunteering in places, but like not feeling like I'm actually making any real kind of impact.
Mhm.
Not you, I work here at Playboy and I work in the theater industry, and while I do very strongly believe theater can change hearts and minds, it's not as much of like a one-to-one as like political fundraising. Of
Yes.
you can very clearly see where the influence is happening. And so after I had expressed this to Jamie, Jamie came back to me a week or two later with the idea of us doing a vampire anthology.
Mhm.
Because while Twilight is what brought us together, I am a general vampire scholar. I'm a vampire nerd about all of this. Anne Rice, Le Fanu, Stoker. I'm deep in the sauce with all of
Yeah.
this stuff.
They don't not,
Yeah.
not they don't have to sparkle to get your attention. And
No.
Margaret is a giant Interview with a Vampire fan. Like
Mhm.
she
Yes.
is the Interview with a Vampire fan.
I literally, you can find the TikTok if you want to embed it. I shall leave that to you. I have a literal coffin with a vampire in it full of Anne Rice books in my house.
Wow. So true,
His name
true
is
fan.
Yeah, his name is Balthazar. He is my son. We love him dearly.
He's great.
Yeah, we love him. And he only freaks Jamie out a little bit. But she came to me and was like, I think we should do this anthology.
Mhm.
Contrarian's never done an anthology before, but I think a short story anthology would be a good idea. And it makes sense with our skill sets to do a
Mm.
vampire one. What are your thoughts? It immediately lit my brain on fire. By the end of, I think, one phone call, we had directed it toward Trevor Project.
Okay.
Yes.
'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to make sure to
And
like highlight that so it doesn't get lost. This, correct me if I'm wrong, but your book sales are directly trying to raise money for the Trevor Project, correct?
Yeah. A
Yeah.
portion of the profits of every book are going to be donated to the Trevor Project. Yeah.
mhm.
Okay. And is it okay to, because something I try to remember is that not everybody watching these videos is like as knowledgeable about this stuff as maybe we are. Would one of you mind just kind of describing what is the Trevor Project?
Absolutely. So they're a nonprofit organization that helps LGBTQ youth
Mhm.
primarily throughout the United States. And one of their primary missions in general, but also specifically right now, is to prevent trans suicide.
Mhm.
It's preventing youth suicide in general is huge for them, but obviously at this present moment, the trans community is kind of the uh, the community whose house is on fire,
Yeah,
so to
Mhm.
speak.
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
And I teach on both the collegiate and undercollegiate level,
Hmm.
and I have a lot of face-to-face time with queer kids across this country.
Hmm.
And by the end of that phone call, it was like the first thing after the inauguration that I felt like, okay, we're actually doing something that I feel like can have an impact.
Yeah.
It got me out of that like paralyzing aspect of fear
Yeah.
that can kick in. It's like, okay, I can pour all of, and it's kind of like what the vampire's for, really, of an as an archetype, is I took all of that paralyzing fear that I felt, all my doubt, all my worry,
Hmm.
and I poured it into working on this project. Jamie would be the first one to tell you, I'm constantly spinning a million plates. This has been my favorite plate all year because I've actually felt like I'm doing something that is fully worthwhile.
Hmm.
Not just something I'm proud of, but that is something that should be in the world.
Yeah.
And the vampire is so much a part of that. And that's a good chunk of what my foreword is about, is the way
Mhm.
we as human beings use vampire characters to sort of flip over the stone and look at the worms underneath.
Yeah.
And a lot of this process has been that for me, is sitting down with these writers, sitting down with Jamie, and really getting into the weeds about what the vampire can do for us right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
prior to this, I had like no connection, no idea about the connection between vampires and queerness, just because
Hmm.
I'm not a vampire scholar. I enjoy vampire literature and vampire media. However, I had not studied it or looked as deeply into it as Margaret has. And so it was really great to gain that level of perspective and be able to go back and look at all vampire media differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really amazing. Like I'm a gay man myself and a lifelong horror fan, kind of more broadly. And I've experienced the same thing with just the horror genre in general, is you don't necessarily assume or think that there's this connection between queerness and horror or queerness and vampires until you start talking to people and start
Yeah.
like even especially with social media now, like
Oh my
you,
God,
you
yeah,
just go on and type in queer vampire or queer horror and you're just inundated with accounts and all, and it kind of speaks to what you were saying, Margaret, about how meaningful this project can be, this idea of just how not alone you suddenly feel when you see that. Like, oh, I'm not the only weirdo. I'm not the only queer kid. I'm not the only person who loves to watch scary movies in the middle of the night.
for
It's
sure. And
very
it also
powerful.
felt like a bellwether against the kind of dark age of truth that we're in right now.
Hmm.
Of There's a lot of people who have a vested interest in redefining the history of things,
Hmm.
and sitting down to construct this forward, pulling out texts that I haven't looked at since undergrad in terms of vampire scholarship,
Hmm.
and just really digging into like, no, the vampire always has and always will be queer, And let's talk about how even your vampire media that you think of as being aggressively heteronormative is actually deeply queer in the other meaning of the term,
Hmm.
which is that queer is not strictly about sexuality, it's also about lifestyle.
Hmm.
And you really, I am personally of the belief that you cannot have a fully heteronormative vampire. I just don't think it's possible with the archetype because to live on blood amongst humans is an inherently queer lifestyle.
Yes. Yeah. Just anything that disrupts the status quo is
Mm-hmm.
just speaks to that just broader sense of queerness.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So okay, so the idea for the book came about and it's being published through Contrarian Publishing, which is your
Yes,
company, correct, Jamie?
that is my company. So in 2020, literally last year in 2024,
Hmm.
I quit my job at HarperCollins. And because I had been feeling disenchanted and disillusioned by the traditional publishing landscape for several different reasons.
Hmm.
And so I quit. And this was after a pretty difficult time for me in my personal life as well. I was just kind of having like health problems.
Hmm.
Um, and I took a lot of the feelings that I had about traditional publishing and I decided to start my own company.
Nice. I just This is such a light bulb moment. It's so silly. The name Contrarian. Like that went right over my head until
Yeah.
you were just talking about it. I'm like, duh, that's why it's named that.
Yeah. So one of the big reasons actually is I struggled with the naming of the company for a little bit, but I'm Korean
Mhm.
and there's a Korean folktale literally called The Green Frog that is about a contrarian frog who does the opposite of everything he's told. And my mom always called me that frog growing up because I was a fairly disobedient child. Um, and in Korea, that's meant to be kind of like a bad thing. You don't want to be a contrarian. And obviously, being contrarian all the time is not ideal either.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for being disobedient, for not being polite. And I think that falls into a lot of what we were talking about
Hmm.
with this anthology of vampires are not obedient, they're not polite, they don't fit into the societal mold of acceptable. And in it's in pursuit of being themselves, right? That's by
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
nature. That's what a vampire is, that's who they are. Um, and that's a great metaphor for queerness. And that's also just a metaphor for the way that I live my life. And so that's what we named the company. And that's one of the things that has been so fitting about our first anthology being a vampire anthology.
Yeah, that's
I've
awesome.
always thought of Contrarian as a perfect home for getting in good literary trouble.
Hmm.
I think all of the titles Jamie's published can fall under that purview.
I love the reframing of getting in trouble as a good thing. Because yeah, something I say, I'm in my day job, I'm a therapist. I work with a lot of queer individuals, and one thing I always say to them is like, we broke the rules just by existing already. So
Yeah,
like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it
absolutely.
to break a few more? If you're talking about getting married, like do whatever the hell you want. Like
Yeah.
do it how you want. If you want your relationship structure to look differently, do it. Break the rules in ways that serve you. Um,
And that's very much a through line of this anthology of all of these characters love in different ways. Some are more recognizable to a standard audience, others are
mhm.
more esoteric, but they all are loving.
Hmm. Yeah, I liked the real range of the love, the intimacy, the sexuality throughout the different stories. It really, and I would assume this was intentional. It really ran the gamut. There were some that are just, kind of what we would think of as very traditional, very loving, intimate romances. There are some that are bloody and gruesome and violent. There's some that are, play with power dynamics. There's different structures, not just binary relationships. Um, there was one story that I feel like my interpretation of was that it ended blood and oil with their love literally just like burning the world to the ground. And you know what? I'm not going to go out and literally light the match, but cathartically, sometimes we need that.
And
Yeah,
it's one of the
absolutely.
powers of literature is it lets us indulge in those kind of power fantasies that can't
Mhm.
necessarily be replicated in our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Most people aren't reading Wuthering Heights because they're about to go out and live that.
Yes.
Hopefully not.
I'd hope not. But people do get something out of it.
Uh, Um, could you talk a little bit about maybe how you discovered your authors and how you got connected with them and brought them together?
Absolutely. So I'll take Lyndall, you take May, then we talk about the rest together.
Perfect.
So with this anthology, we knew that we wanted to get one or two authors who were established in their fields that we knew what we were getting into and could kind of help us set the tone for the anthology. So we reached out to several people, but the person that we landed on that I'm so happy with, and because she was one of our first choices, was
Mhm.
Lyndall Clipstone.
Okay.
And Lyndall is an author who she's a YA author who I had actually previously had the pleasure of working with very briefly at Macmillan when I interned at Macmillan.
Hmm.
Um, and I followed her online, and she was talking a lot online about how, despite the fact that she is married to a man and has a kid, that she is queer and that she is
Hmm.
trying to be more open about her queerness. And that was playing a lot into her now released novel, Tenderly I Am Devoured. And so she was talking a lot about that online. And I was thinking, this would be such a great fit for this anthology because we want this to be a space where people are comfortable talking about their queerness, where they may not necessarily have been super comfortable with it. And as a bisexual woman myself, I don't know if Lyndall is bisexual. I just know that she is married to a man and also is attracted to not men. Um, but as a bisexual woman myself, I think there has been historically a lot of bi erasure,
Hmm.
and I wanted to make sure that we were adequately representing that because obviously we didn't know what kinds of stories we were going to get
Yeah,
in an open submission process, and so I wanted to make sure that we were representing that kind of a thing.
absolutely.
Totally. And
Yeah, I
then
think.
the other author who appears in this anthology that was approached and wasn't found through a blind submission process was May Murray.
Okay.
May is a friend of mine. Actually, we bonded over Interview with the Vampire. As Jamie cited earlier, I'm a very big fan both of those books and of the television adaptation on AMC,
Hmm.
and also the Neil Jordan film. I love all of it. But we really bonded over the writing Hannah Moscovich has done for season 2 of the television show. Hannah
Okay.
Moscovich is an incredible Canadian playwright whose work deals a lot with power dynamics, sexuality, women's sort of role in the workplace, and ways in which things can be leveled or if they can ever be leveled.
Hmm.
Incredible writer. And May and I really bonded online talking about Hannah's work. And we had specifically discussed a couple of months before Jamie and I started working on this anthology about how May really wanted to delve into writing about vampirism from her perspective.
Hmm.
Because May is an Indigenous writer who has written quite a bit of horror about the reproductive rights, basically crisis is really the word for it in the country right now, but also the ways in which gender is forced upon Indigenous communities in the
Okay.
United States, and sort of the ways in which Western ideas of gender and sexuality are not necessarily the same as what she was raised in,
Hmm.
and the conflict of that. And when we decided working on this, I think within a week, I was like, can we please talk to May? I think May's a good idea. We approached May, and I knew when we approached May, we were going to get something unusual because I don't think May is capable of holding to a cliche. I just don't think that's in her blood. frankly. She's one of those writers who will always approach from an unusual angle. And
Mhm.
she's who wrote that Blood and Oil story that you cited earlier,
Yeah.
where the vampire isn't necessarily your stereotypical wears a cape, feeds on human blood, and seduces the world.
Yeah.
They're a lot closer to almost an eldritch horror. And it's very much a story that falls in the eco horror genre. It's
Hmm.
unlike anything else in the collection. And as someone who's read so much vampire fiction in my life, I can't name another vampire story that plays upon these ideas in the way her does.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very unique. Almost felt more like almost a force of nature as opposed to,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, a traditional vampire. Um,
But it's still vampirism at the end of the day, which is what's so compelling.
yeah. And that's like, I think, to be clear, I think you both did an amazing job with this, but I think that's one of the challenges of a book like this is there's so many levels, different levels at which you have to think about representation, like the authors, the character types within the stories, the depiction of different forms and types of vampires. It's a lot of balls to juggle, and
Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many phone calls we had that went until 3 a.m. during the selection process.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
the way that
So
we ran, yeah, do you want to take how we ran it?
you could do it.
Okay, so we opened up for wide submissions because it
Mhm.
was important to us with this project that the majority of the voices expressed within the anthology were sort of new to us.
Mhm.
We wanted new blood in the room, so to speak. We weren't like we could have put together an anthology pulling from all of our various friends within the literary circle, but it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
And so once we had each selected a writer that we were bringing in, for Jamie it was Lindahl, for me it was May, we opened up wide submissions and basically said, hey, your brief is that this is the title. If it's got blood, it's got sweat, and it's got queers, we want to see it.
I love it.
And we got an incredibly wide ranging variety of stories.
Mhm.
And very few actually that fell in that stereotypical place. Like
Yeah.
you'd think
Margaret
maybe we would have to like
actually Margaret never actually saw all of the submissions because of the way that we did the selection process.
Mhm.
But I would say even from my perspective, having read every single submission that we got, I would say that none of them were super like Dracula stereotypical,
Yep.
which
Absolutely.
was very interesting.
people
Well,
people really
that's
came with their best and were really invigorated by it. I remember the day we posted it on social media, we immediately got people being like, okay, what day does like the portal open? How do I get in? They were very invigorated.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of doing it through a queer lens is like even if on the surface the story is like very like typical and cliche, just the nature of queering it just twists it in a way that makes it
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Like, and I've said that about movies, TVs, books, like we don't need to reinvent the wheel for everything. Like some queer people, we want to see the stereotypical traditional stories that cisgender and heterosexual people have
Mm-hmm.
had forever. We want to see them with us in it now. So there's like room for both.
Absolutely. There's this phrase that I say with one of my best friends, Allie Regan, who's an actor here in New York, which is that
Mm.
queer people are allowed to be boring too.
Yes.
There's like a lot of pressure to like be like performing your identity once you come out.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can be queer and you also just like really like your dog and making frittata on the weekends. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Everyone does not have to be factory made for Andy Warhol.
Yeah. I mean, that's something about me where like I don't think people usually assume that I am a queer woman. I
Hmm.
don't present myself particularly as a queer person, and also like prior to this, honestly, I didn't talk about it that much.
Hmm.
Which is probably some like trauma related stuff that we don't need to get into. Every queer
I'm
person has,
taking my therapist hat off.
yeah,
No, I
no,
have
every
nothing to
every
say.
queer person has that. We don't need to get into that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of so one of the things that was important to us was to show a wide range of queerness and queer people and show that, sometimes we are more fun and out like and outspoken about being queer, and sometimes we're just like people.
Hmm.
Most of
Mhm.
the time we're just people. We're always just people, actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like
And
you got
so
like a
we
really big yeah, like a really big response to the call for
We
submissions.
did get a very good response. It took a while to go through all the submissions. So the way that we ran the process essentially was that I did kind of a we tried to do as blind a reading as possible.
Mm.
So I did a blind read through of all of the submissions and then went through and kind of picked out a top. Was it 15 for you to look at?
you sent me 25, I think,
I think
for that
maybe it was
initial
20.
big one.
Maybe it was
Yeah,
20.
let's just call it in the middle.
I think it was 20. I sent her like 20. And prior to doing that, we also like it wasn't fully blind in the sense that I did, after picking, go back and look through it who people were to ensure that we were looking at a good range of people and identities and making sure that we weren't going to have an anthology that was unrepresentative of the population of the planet.
Yep. Very good.
And so once I got those 20, I sat down and I do what I call a double read, where I read it once through for pleasure and then I read it once through with my analysis hat.
Mm.
And after I did my first like pleasure read before I even got to the double read, I think I discarded only two, which is rare. I normally, because the way I work with the pleasure reads is as a like marker for myself. If I find myself having to reread a page more than twice to understand what's going on, I put it to the side.
Hmm.
So there were only two of that 20 that I put to that side. And then I did my analysis read, which was, from my perspective and my role in this anthology, what is this saying about vampirism? How is it using a vampiric character? What are the ways in which it is engaging with the history of this trope, knowingly or unknowingly?
Yeah.
And cutting it down, because we already had these two, we knew that, like, for the sake of budget and also for the length of an anthology, no one really wants an anthology of 60 stories at once.
Yeah.
We knew that there were like six, that we needed to be picking six out of here. And the number of phone calls I made in Jamie were like, but like, what if it's eight?
Oh.
What if we made it 10 long? Because I fell in love with so many of these stories. And it like we said this to the authors who didn't make it in the anthology when we were sending messages. There were so many people that were like right on the bubble of like,
Hmm.
this is a fantastic story. Please know it's not being turned down because there's any problem with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
We love it. We just literally only have so many spaces.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, you
And then
gotta
once we
save.
had picked,
Oh,
sorry, what?
sorry. I was just gonna joke. You got to save something for volume two, right?
Maybe. But once we had picked those six, then Jamie revealed to me who the people in the six were. And one of them ended up being someone we actually know incredibly well who had never publicly written before, which is
Wow.
still magical to me.
Yeah. No, she's actually one of our very close friends, which we were not expecting at all. Um, which part of me was hesitant because I didn't want people to think that we picked it because she was
Hmm.
friends with us. It was truly like double blind reading. I read it
Yeah.
blind and
Yeah.
loved it. Margaret read it blind and loved it.
And if I remember correctly, I did my full blind. So the way that it was sent to me with blind, I had literally no identifying information.
Yeah.
I didn't even have titles. I just had the story. And I remember messaging her, I'm like, this one with Veronica, I'm obsessed with this. And Jimmy was like, well,
You
Yeah,
you want to know
implied.
some
when
more about
Margaret
this one?
came back, she had two where she was like, we need to do these two. These two are like, we need to include them, love them,
Hmm.
no notes. Um,
That's cool.
yeah,
It's fun to get the glimpse, like, because a lot of times at Macabre Daily we talk with like kind of like the creative people, like the front of the project, for lack of a better
Mm-hmm.
word. I love getting this glimpse into like the behind the scenes of sort of how it's made too.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's really
A
cool.
lot of reading and a lot of like bickering over FaceTime of like, well, if I get mine, then you get yours.
Oh yeah, no, we ranked the finalists and we were like, okay, you really want this one, but I really want this one. So let.
I won't name what story it is, but there is one story in the anthology that I think at one point I was like, I will come to your house. It has to stay.
And your friendship somehow not only
Right.
survived, maybe got
It's
stronger through
better.
this process.
I'd say it's better.
I don't think that our friendship was strained at all in the making of.
No,
I
no.
think we just had a really great time the whole time.
Yeah,
That's
I
wonderful.
understand where people come from when they're like, don't work with your friends. It can be an issue. I think that's only an issue if you're really involving money.
Hmm.
This being a charity drive, neither of us are profit motivated
Hmm.
for this.
Yeah.
And so because of that, that was never an issue for us. We're both aligned in that our goal is trying to raise as much as we can for the Trevor project versus like bickering about rights credits or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm curious, and it's okay if the answer is no to this, but like, did any themes from the stories like really, really surprise you? Because I assume you kind of went into it thinking like, oh, well, vampires, queerness, this is probably what'll come out. Was there anything that felt
Blood and
really,
blood and blood and oil surprised me,
yeah,
and still we rot surprised me.
My
mhm.
God, still we are at. Oh,
I know.
That one,
So
yes.
yeah, still we rot is like a medical horror commentary on the ways in which we're kind of living in a vampiric capitalistic society right now. And it's such an incredibly brilliant way to use vampirism,
Hmm.
but it's very rarely done because it is inherently political to talk about vampirism in that way. And there are a lot of writers in the commercial space who just aren't going to touch that.
Hmm.
And that story, it's so beautifully done. It's so evocative. Like you can almost smell it, is the way I describe that particular one. Is
Hmm.
like I can like smell the disinfectant when I'm reading Still We Rot.
For
And
sure. That one I felt
oh,
like there's a quite an intersection between like queerness and people living with disabilities, and I felt like that
yeah.
one really kind of catered to that and leaned into that piece of it. I think a lot of people will it'll
100%.
resonate with people.
Yeah, I hope so.
Totally. And L.A. Barron is another writer who came to us from an interesting way. You first met L.A. through one of Contrarian's other programs, right?
Yeah, so LA actually had reached out to Contrarian previously for some freelance
Mm,
stuff. Because on top of being a publishing company, we also, another way that we do business is that we offer our services freelance to authors who we're not necessarily publishing, but who we will work with. So
mhm,
I am an editor, not just for our books, but freelancing. And then we also will do different like marketing or query packages, looking at that kind of a thing, et cetera, et cetera. And
mhm,
so that's how LA had originally, how we'd originally met. And then they actually came to a writing retreat that we did
mm,
this in March. Um, and I will say, I do need to admit, LA's story was one of the ones that was not a full blind read for me
mhm,
because I did learn about parts of it at this writer's retreat.
mhm.
I didn't actually
But
know that.
yeah, I read the story and it was so good that I was like, I mean, I don't think that it's fair for me to say no to this because I know the person. Like, that's
Yeah.
not the way that I want to operate this. Where it was such a worthy addition to the anthology, um, that I was like, I'm gonna put this into the files that I'm handing to Margaret, and if she agrees with me and it's not just my bias, then
Mhm.
let's do it.
Nice.
Yeah, and I pulled it out immediately as
Yeah.
one that we needed to do. So it 100% passed my double blind. And I do think it's also important to note I am aware of other stories that were submitted from people that I know sort of on the outer echelons that didn't even make it past the Jamie level. Like this is
Yeah.
not full of just everyone we needed submitted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually did not know most of these people.
I think Anna McGee and L.A. Barron are the only ones, other than May and Lyndall, because those were
Yeah,
sourced.
I mean, I will say Lyndall, I also don't know super personally. I worked with her as an intern on her debut
Hmm.
novel.
Well, it's such a small
Fair.
world. Like, how can you not
Yeah.
make some connections?
Yeah, but with the rest of our writers, a lot of them, this is their like publishing debut.
That's
These are
amazing.
people who had stories to tell, and because of how we ran our process, they were able to have their voices heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fantastic debut for a lot of them. Like I loved
Hmm.
reading it. And I know that a lot of the people who frequent our website are really going to be drawn to this too. Um,
Great.
I think I
But
know this is kind of all my prepared questions, but is there anything either of you would want to say about the book or the project that maybe I haven't asked about?
I'd be interested to know what your favorite was. Because I
Ooh.
think everyone, like, the beauty of this anthology is there's so many different types of vampire stories in here
Mm-hmm.
that there's a story for everyone depending on what their taste is. And I feel like everyone has a different story that they really gravitate toward.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna break contact. I have to look at my list for a second.
No
go for it.
worries.
I think that personally, as a gay man, I think "Sucker" by Austin Lee was the one that kind of resonated the most for me. Um, it just like uh, or just nailed the experience of of online dating and the apps, and obviously through a very exaggerated and bloody and violent lens, really touched on just that risk and that fear and the exhilaration that can
Yeah.
come with that
Hmm.
whole experience. So I enjoyed that one.
Sucker's fantastic. And I've told Austin this many times. It astounds me that more people don't use the idea of a modern vampire sort of fishing via dating apps. It feels
Yeah.
like such an obvious thing once you think of it, but Austin's one of very few people that I've ever seen do it.
Yeah. Some of these
I
things, yeah.
loved that aspect of it so much.
Yeah, and some of these things do feel so obvious when it's pointed out to you, but then you realize like we're not talking about this. Like I think it was in Sweet Crimson Dripping. I don't know if it was explicitly stated in the story, but it was very clearly leaning into this idea of vampires as found family, chosen family,
Hmm.
which is something that is so familiar to queer people. And it was just, maybe it's just me, but it was one of those that had that light bulb. And I'm like, oh, duh. Like vampires choose their
Yeah.
family, queer people choose their family. Why aren't we connecting these more often?
Hmm.
Yeah, one of the great joys of this anthology for me was actually there's so many ways in which the themes of every story we chose unintentionally lined up or
Mm,
had these interesting connections where you wouldn't necessarily have expected them. And so that was very, very fun. It unintentionally is actually quite a cohesive anthology, given the fact that it was total randomness in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
It was total randomness, and literally the only brief submissions people were given were blood, sweat, and queers. And
Yeah.
somehow they still all fit on the same tree really beautifully.
Yeah. I will also say the submissions we got across the board, most of them were less sexually explicit than I expected them to be. We fully expected to get a lot of submissions that were very explicit,
mm-hmm.
and we actually didn't receive like an overwhelming amount of that. And so based on that and on kind of what we ended up settling on what we wanted for the anthology, which was that it would also appeal to teens who
Yeah.
were in crisis. We're raising money for the Trevor Project. It only makes sense that this is something that a teenager could also comfortably read.
Oh yeah.
Um, we ended up making this an anthology that is steamy but not spicy. And it
Yeah.
never
It's like
quite tipped its hand into just, you know,
it's
titillating.
safely PG-13. It's the kind of thing that you could give to your cousin who just came out at his 16th birthday.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I think that's a really beautiful thing because a lot of times when you combine vampires and queerness in literature traditions, it immediately goes to the R-rated place. And look,
Yeah.
I love an R-rated novel as much as the next person, but there's a giant gap
Hmm.
for people who want to engage with all of these themes we've been talking about in this interview, but they aren't necessarily comfortable with more explicit depictions for many different reasons. There's many people who are full-fledged adults who just don't like reading about that, and that's completely fine. And this is an anthology that can still serve them.
Yeah. Well, we say like in the kind of in the broader horror world, there's a lot of people who are always pushing for like more intense, scarier, scarier. And and I love that stuff. But just like you said, whether it's vampires, horror, these communities are so important to people who consider themselves outsiders that we can't forget as we evolve and grow, we can't forget that we also have to be opening the door for like the next generation to
For
get
sure.
introduced and to come into this world. So,
Absolutely. And I also think it's important to lightly push back against the stereotype of queer people as being hypersexual.
hmm,
Getting into that sort of we are also normal thing that we were talking about earlier. It
yeah.
is possible to tell a queer story that isn't about sex.
You didn't hear it here, but we have boring sex too sometimes. Uh, um, well, so yeah, thank you both so much for talking to me about this book. I loved hearing about it, and we're gonna be like doing a review of it properly, hopefully in the next week or so. So we'll get this interview, the review up, so more people can learn about it. When people watch this and read about it, how can they find the book online if they want to buy it? How can they find the two of you if they wanna follow you?
Um, in terms of the book, anywhere.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, if the book wherever you purchase your books, it's available there. We do encourage everybody to shop at their local indie bookstore. They
Mhm.
can order at an indie bookstore, even if you don't see it on the shelves, you can go and ask someone, "Hey, can you order this book for me?" And we have partnered actually with several indie bookstores as well, so you could check out the specific stores that we've partnered with.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
if you go to Contrarian Publishing online, you'll see a whole array of placements we've done with different indie bookstores across the country.
Hmm, fantastic. All right. Well, Jamie and Margaret, thank you so much for your time. And thank you, everybody out there in the Macabre Daily universe, for giving us a listen. And we'll talk to you all soon. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian.
So much.
Bye.